Okay, so I'm going to start off the spring garden tour by reminding you that I told you you can simply throw things on the ground, pardon my hillbilly mess. But this is tall bearded iris coming up on the side of the house where basically I just threw all the extra rhizomes on top of a gravel pile. So this is without any soil. And you see how bright green they are coming up. Just totally ignored them. So next time I recommend a tall bearded iris to fill a space you want to just not have to deal with, there you go. Just so you know, when they look like crap and they need to be rehabbed because they've got iris borers from being ignored for too long, that's fine. Just pull them up, give them a little bleach water, stick them back in the ground somewhere else, or don't even bother sticking them back in the ground, that's my point. But you can just toss them on the side somewhere and they will rehab themselves. Now eventually I'll dig this up and use all of that as stock to go elsewhere in the garden. But for now, it's in the ignored part on the hillbilly side of the house. This is where all the building supplies and whatnot just kind of pile up. I'm going to try not to blind everybody as the sun is hitting. Sun's just coming up. It's like 9:30 something, so nice morning light. Always important to check where your light's going to be. Look at all that bamboo. So I'm gonna build the trellises this year. Instead of using honeysuckle, I'm treating all this bamboo with boric acid to make it last for a very long time. Basically, you soak it in boric acid, just submerge it in running water with boric acid. So I'm gonna use the old pool. That's my plan. Life hack. Old pool, don't want to clean it, throw boric acid in it. Why not? Anyway, something like 300 canes that I pulled out of my boss's house, as he wanted his timber bamboo removed. So we just hauled it all over here and dropped it in the driveway. We'll see what happens there. You can see in the distance there's some curly willow in a bucket. That was another house that I took down the curly willow. If you look in the back, you can see the stump. She used to grow, this particular client used to grow all of her stock for her floral arranging. So she just stuck a twig that she got from the florist in the ground and up came the tree. And then every year she cuts more of it off. So this year was the year to shrink it down to size. So with the sun at my back, I'm going to walk out here. Again, at the post office box, I have the bucket of forgotten iris. Those are all leftovers that I just left in there. Totally ignored, never watered it, nothing. Now, I did have two piles of the aged manure and the mulch left over last season that was over there. You can see where it kind of balded the driveway, which is great because it's supposed to be gravel and instead it's weeds. So that has been applied finally to the front yard. So everything got a good dose of aged horse manure, basically fertilizer, and then cover over that with a little bit of mulch that was already starting to degrade. So you can see how happy everything is. And I've hardly had to weed at all out here, but everybody's starting to pop up. So just a little update on where we are in the garden. Now the rest of that grass is still coming out, but you can see what the hell strip will look like eventually. So I've got phlox and liriope and lamb's ears. Those are all things, well, maybe not the phlox, but the phlox is over on more of the garden side. It's not quite blooming yet, but right on that little wedge, there's some phlox. But it's a creeper. But the point of the health strip, I don't want grass. I want something that cleans up easily. So instead of worrying about it, I'm planting the lamb's ear. You can see how far that took off over the year. The lamb's ear mint that I had, and then mother of thyme, so that when I do decide to clean it up, I can just hit it with the mower. And I think I might put some liriope out here. That's also needs to get cut down in the spring. Every spring, all those little straps die. So looks like crap. You just mow it, done. And then everything will come back and bloom again. So you can see the trees are getting quite large. They put on about 3 feet a year. So these are 3-year-old trees on hugelkultur mounds from, you can see in the background where that fire pit ball is, that used to be a pine tree that someone had topped before I bought the house. Anyway, so that's slowly getting burnt to ash, and then I transfer the ash to the compost heap because that's also good for your garden. And then I'm coming over to the arch. The arch has, on the right-hand side, it has a Zephyrine Druin rose, and on the left-hand side, it has a Don Juan. So a dark, brilliant, bloody red for the Don Juan, and then a brilliant pink for the Zephyrine. And they're both climbing roses. So eventually, I'd like to have this entire arbor just wrapped in roses. And it works out well because the laterals are what send up the blooms. So getting those canes established is just the biggest issue. And underneath, it likes to grow a lot of weeds, so I've pretty heavily mulched under there. But we'll see. Who cares? Can't see it anyway. You can see all the iris and daylilies are starting to pop up over on the side. And the pile of leaves that never got gone from the garden, well, that's okay too, because all of this grass is eventually coming out, so I really don't care if the pile kills the grass. This will all be moss in the shade parts, and then thyme and things I can mow that smell good on this other side. Sorry, I'm having hard time with this thing. This little toggle thing is interesting. But anyway, so that's down at the base. You can see that's Gordon's gravestone with the Don Juan, haha, rose. It needs it's sort of trained. It needs to be pruned for the spring. I'm not really liking the look of that older cane that's coming out, so I'm gonna whack him all the way back and then see what else the eye sends up. And then on McGregor's side is the Zephyrine. She's doing pretty good. She's starting to send up, I don't know if you can see, she's starting to send up the laterals. So this should be pretty pink pretty soon here. Well, soon. Time's relative, right? Seems like yesterday it was October. It's already March, almost April. But everything's starting to leaf out, and I'm gonna try and walk around. So this is a little experiment. I think I'm gonna use these for plant support. So the smaller bamboo lengths, as I cut, this thing seems to be blocking itself. The smaller bamboo lengths as I cut, what the heck is that? Sorry, trying to adjust here. I'm not sure what has happened. What is going on here? Hey, there you go. Goodness gracious, that was a pain. Sorry about that. Anyway, it seems to be, the right-hand side seems to be caught on the toggle so far as viewing goes. That's interesting. That sucks. Anyway, I never said I was a cinematographer, right? Okay, so the back side. Remember, this was all grass. So these bamboo stakes, this year should be the first year that the Canterbury bells and the foxgloves bloom. So I set this thing up just a slight experiment to see if the wind is going to knock it over, and I think that's going to be good. So as the bloom stalks come up, I'm just going to tie the stalks to the rod so I don't have a million plant stakes. I just have the one, and then they can show themselves off. And you can see that the view up the street is slowly getting blocked in by those arborvitae that are basically providing a screen. More and more they can't see into my house. So this year this driveway will definitely block the view, because this river birch in front of me has been pruned on the bottom. I don't really want him reaching into the driveway. I want him to grow straight up, so I'm going to encourage him to go up instead. And then right next to him is a nice little hydrangea that fills that entire space, basically. I whacked her hard last year. Another bridal veil spirea. I call it bridal veil. I think it's called wedding something. Anyway, I don't care. It's a snowbally spirea, so pretty white blooms. I've got 2 lilacs over here that are being rehabbed. They were yanked out of somebody's yard and thrown in the dumpster. And, you know, I can't kill the plant. So this little guy is starting to leaf out, and you can see how hard he was whacked. He's darn near dead. But he's leafing out, so he may just make it back. And this guy is definitely going to make it back. You can see all those teeny tiny nubs. And the bulbs are coming up, and then I'm not sure what I'm going to plant out here. It depends really on the beast. Give that a good burn. Transfer all those ashes to the garden. All right, I'm trying not to blind you, so into the shade I go so I can see what I'm doing, sort of. The back side of this bed is all foxgloves, so that should be tall and lovely up against the house. There's also a little bit of bean balm, some old-fashioned hollyhocks, and then everything else is pretty low growing. But they'll send up spikes, lots of iris. Should be serious bloom this year. At the very front entrance bed, you can see all that bright green right there. That's all Mexican evening primrose. Now that's a spreader that you completely ignore unless it is to throw some out, much like you would mint. So I have, in this bed, I have nothing but competition. And by that I mean everybody is a vigorous grower, and we'll see who dukes it out and wins. It's also where I continually yank the mint out for the hell strip. Yank that out and transplant it. It could just, you know, rest, rehabilitate over here until I tear it out. And again, much like iris, you don't have to worry about planting it. You can just stick it on the ground, really. But you got tiny little bulbs popping up in here, just starting. And, you know, we'll see what the squirrels and all the other vermin that natively grow here under my soil and up in my trees. They who want to have babies and feed them like to steal my bulbs. Anyway, the twiggy looking thing is a 9-bark, and it will bloom on all of those old stems. That's why I've left them, but you can see the new ones are just straight vertical. That thing is going to get big. So I'm going to start training that off the driveway and kind of have it go laterally instead. And I'm not sure if I'm keeping this taxus or not, but I've trimmed him back many, many times, and he's big, but he blocks the window right there, and that's the puppy's room. So she gets a little less distracted, except for the birds at the window, because the birds like the taxus a lot. But I'm not sure. It kind of anchors the house, but I like it blocking the window. But at the same time, it's taxus, and it's kind of in the wrong place. The gnome dome, my favorite place to just kind of sit, enjoy the garden in the shade. Once all these trees leaf out, this stays nice and shady, and then the dome itself protects me from anything falling from above, say bird blessings and tree sheds, all that good stuff. Hopefully I'll get all those border pieces hammered in. That's all free wood, and they kind of break down and rot, whatever. I don't care, it's free. And for a season that looks good. I think this is the year I'm finally going to give up on these rhododendrons. I have not treated them kindly, and I have not treated them from their disease, but rhododendrons, once the disease gets down in the roots, the fungus actually lives in the soil, so you can never plant a rhododendron there again. That's fine. This is on the other side of this fence are my neighbor's giant maples, and these trees, the roots are way over here in my yard, of course. I'm way under the drip line, and there's basically no water over here. So despite this being mostly shade, this is the only sun it's going to get. In the morning it gets, I don't know, 2-3 hours maybe of sun. So it might be a great place to plant roses, but it's not wet enough. I do have a drip line installed now. I don't really turn it on very often. I've got it hooked up to my rain barrels to kind of drain them as well. So every spout on my house has barrel on it. or at least that's the intention. But as the system gets up and running, then, you know, we'll see what happens, how much water I can give it. So these guys are all, that's another rhododendron. I bought that 3 years ago. That's as big as it's gotten. They were Walmart clearance. You know, I just picked them up for, I think, $1.50 a piece and just threw them in the garden because that's how I roll. I don't like to kill things. Oh, look, there's a fern. I didn't even realize I planted a fern there, but there's a little bitty fern right there in my shadow. But we'll see who comes up and who doesn't. There's a lot of hostas in this bed. All transplants and ignored. These are daisies. So a little bright white to brighten the day. And there's some English ivy that's coming over all on its own, just out of nowhere. You hear my friendly dogs barking. Those are not my dogs, those are my neighbor's dogs. So the biggest German Shepherd I've ever seen in my life lives on the other side, and he's just a big lump. But he's intimidating. He scares the heck out of everybody. So we'll see what makes it over here. There are ferns transplanted over here in this big empty spot. All of that bright green is foxgloves and Canterbury bells, so those should be nice tall bloomies up against the fence line. And if we can keep the dogs contained, they can not trample through there because they like to use that pass-through right there where I have a screen stuck in their fence. Because of where I am, everything blows into my yard. All the trash from the neighborhood, all the leftover kids' toys, whatever, it all rolls down the hill and blows into my yard. So if I've got that blocked, then it stops there. And, you know, kind of keeps it contained. I can pick it up, clean it up, whatever. I have a rehabbing buddleia right here, and he will be getting transplanted this year back out of the shade. Right in front of that little twiggy bush is the giant timber bamboo. We're going to see what those rhizomes do. Those are runners, so that's one way I'm trying to do it. But to fill in that fence line and contain it is the goal. So there's ferns in there, and then there's bamboo, and we'll see who makes it there. Now I say that because number one, the yard drains to here, and the wind tunnel goes through here. It's pretty much all shade, especially once that tree leaves out. You can see where the branches are creating shade on the fence line. That's all going to be leafed out and completely shaded. So this basically almost gets no sun whatsoever. So we'll see. On the other side of the fence, however, there's the puppy bloodhound, who likes to eat everything. So over here, we're trying the bamboo another way. So these are the actual stalks. Took me 4 hours to dig out 3. 3 giant bamboo. So those are in a 55-gallon drum, contained, so that they do not spread. Here in Ohio, it's illegal to plant them where they're not contained, because they are spreading. But if they take, this will grow to be about 50 feet tall. And because of the rounded barrel, the runners should shoot straight up in the air. Easy to cut those off and keep them under control. And the new beds. So this is where I've, rather than dig out all the grass, because we know I hate grass, but rather than dig out all the grass, we've simply laid down layers of cardboard. This is a no-dig installation, so it's cardboard with the aged manure over the top of it. And I've laid that down pretty thick. The cardboard should break down over a couple of years and just block most of the weeds. Now you can see some grass coming up in there, but it's, for the most part, contained. So it should die off this year. It'd be easy for me to rip out any stragglers. Except that the puppy also likes to eat everything, as mentioned, which means she's been trying to dig up the cardboard, which then leaves the grass to come right through. So the hydrangeas, everything got chewed on, and now has the old rabbit fencing that I had up for the ducks is now wrapped around all of the shrubs, trying to save my money. As I've installed this just last year, I spent quite a bit of work in time on this. But we'll see. Who knows? You see how short the shrubs were? They weren't that short when I put them in. And I still can't keep her out of this. But there are ferns mixed in between back here in the shade. And I get to that gate, it starts getting a little sunnier. And then over to the bluebird house. We've got a bluebird trail over here. At the bluebird house is really, that stays pretty much full sun going back to the big tree. So as I go down the fence line, almost all of that is just blasting sun. But you can see how this fence, number one, the fence is ancient, came with the house. There was a tree here that smashed the fence, that's why it looks like that. But a tree was allowed to just rot rather than be taken out, and well, it took out the fence. So we've got another 9-bark right there. There's a river birch. Because of where the yards all drain right there, there's like a gully running behind my neighbor's house where the whole neighborhood just drains down to this area, and it becomes a swamp. So in order to suck up some of that water and not block the actual utility drain that is right there on that corner down on the ground, I don't know if you can see it or not, but put in a curly willow and a river birch to suck up the water. They don't live forever, they don't get too huge, and that should do that. I've also got a swamp hibiscus somewhere underneath all those leaves. The miscanthus grass that I took out of somebody's yard and divided up, we'll see what makes it. The dog, again, ate it. But I think some of it's going to come back, so there'll be some like pampas grass along the fence line. And then we get into our evergreens going forward, which most of them grow pretty quick. Your arborvitaes grow about 3 feet a year. The Leland cypress will grow 4 feet a year. And then just to mix it up, I've got some burning bush in there. As much as I hate euonymus, burning bush is fairly containable. Little Japanese maple at the front of the bed. He didn't look so good. That's because somebody chewed on it. And it wasn't a rabbit. And it looks to me like somehow she managed to get yet another branch off of it. That little brat. Well, we'll see what this guy gets to do this year, but it looks to me like she tore another branch off, and I don't know how she did it. But, oh, puppies. There's a transplanted knocked out rose that I've whacked into oblivion. And my favorite thing to do to roses is scare the heck out of them, make them bloom. So we'll see what happens. She gnawed on the barberry, which you would think the thorns would stop her, but no, no, no. Surely not. They might be considered floss, I guess. I don't know. The blue spruce here is going to be the slowest growing thing, so I'm only going to get probably 6 to 12 inches a year. It's going to take forever. He'll grow to 50 feet, but again, at that growth rate, I'm not worried about it. I'll be dead before he gets that tall. On the back line, we're going to go into a little more of the pollinator series. Back behind on the fence line, so we've got Russian sage and buddleias. Usually put sunflowers there, and then a lot of the creeping thyme is in there. So we're getting into the lamb's ear borders, which get moved. It's really the only way to contain lamb's ear anyway. Just continually rip it out. It's as aggressive as the mint. Little globe chamaecyparis, or as some people call it, chamaecyparis. I don't know, I learned it one way on the west coast and they learned it another way here. And then more arborvitaes going in. There's a nice little holly just to mix it up a bit. The stump. Ah, look at that. This is what puppies do to bushes. So there's another burning bush. It's supposed to be a little guy, so he'll be right in front, just to give a little pop of color, mix it up with all this green. The Leland cypress are what I love the most. They grow about 4 feet a year. Big, graceful, glorious things. That bathtub's out of here now that the ducks are gone. So back in the back there, basically in front of this, where all of this no-dig bed is, you can see the brown is the difference in where the bed is. I'm putting in all pollinator series mixed in with the new trees to block views and whatnot, and do a little windbreak if I can. But back behind there, where that maple is, all of that is basically for the bees. So bees like a little bit of shade, a little bit of privacy, and they don't like to travel far for their food. So eventually there will be bees in that box. But there will be plenty of food sources. They also like to collect honey or collect pollen from one specific plant at a time. So doing your groupings is the best idea. So that's basically what I'm doing. This is the Buddleia area. But there will be lots of yummy deliciousness for the bees going forward. Coming across, I'm going to try and wrap this up fairly quickly, even though it's another section of the garden is just as big as where I was. Those who were overwintering are in those black bins. Oh, puppy's losing their mind. And the black bins are overwintering and or rehabilitating plants that need to go into the ground. And then that used to be the duck house behind the corkboard. I just decided I was done dealing with changing frozen water and whatnot from the ducks last year. So this year for my insecticide, I'll be applying diatomaceous earth, because they used to eat all my bugs. Now I have to find another natural way to kill them, because that's just how I roll. We've got a gnawed-on climbing rose right there coming around, so we're getting into more perennials. And then the open beds, I'm just now starting to do the spring cleanup of, see who made it past the puppy and who's going to come back this year, and then where I'm going to put things. So the bamboo structure will come off the back of this house. Let's see if, come on, focus. Off the back of the house will be the giant arbor for the grapes and climbing roses, and it's going to track across to this post, so it's about 30 feet, and I'm planning on it being about 10 feet wide. So it's going to, because this yard bakes, and veggies like sun, yes, but they don't like to be baked, and I don't want to have to water. That's not the kind of gardening I do. So I'm going to provide them a little bit of shade as the sun tracks across the sky, because this is basically due south. So yeah, it's going to get real hot in this bed. And some things have done well, but despite all the amendments, it's still too much sun. So if I do veggies, I gotta figure out a way of blocking the dog from getting in here. So I'm putting the fence back up. And despite her greatest efforts to behave herself, she just does not succeed. So I'm going to try and put up more posts and see if I can block her out with some better chicken wire. I'm going to take out this divider here where I had it set up to keep her out of the ducks, take that crisscross panel out of the way, and she can have the right of way there. And then I'll put a gate up between these two beams that the previous owner had installed into the ground. I mean, it's like an 18-foot beam buried 6 feet in the ground. It's just crazy. There's no way I'll ever get it out, so I might as well just work with it. The massive compost heap has broken down quite a bit, but is nowhere near ready. So we'll be turning that, and it gets compacted, and of course the puppy ate half of it. Every time I turn around, she's got something dead hanging out of her face, and it's plant life. I think she'd be vegan today, given the choice. And then moving all of these fences and random things that are piled up. So that's my goal. So this gets stunning at some point, but it ain't there yet. And then that's one of the strawberry beds where the bamboo poles are just laid straight. That bed of strawberries, I want to say there's probably 200 plants in there. So we'll see who overwintered. I did not do any crown thinning. I did not do any mulching. Nothing. Just want to see my little experiment, see how it works. There are strawberries in between the liriope beds right here. So it's another kind of strawberry. The big planting is mixed varieties. We're not sure what, that was divided from my brother-in-law. And then these were, I believe these are the Alpine variety right here. And then, yeah, where did I put the rest of them? Oh, they're in pots, in the citrus pots in the house, and they are, frankly, they made it most of the summer, or most of the winter, and a couple of pots actually have fruits on them from inside the house over the winter, and, which was the plan, but the others are not doing so well. So we'll still have strawberries because they had, I don't know, like 400 plants. I put some as ground covers, but it's all experiment. But yeah, so that's my goal sometime today, to finish rolling out all of this fencing and getting it propped up and stapled to the ground so that she doesn't go under or over it. This, I think I'm going to take out, whoops, I'm going to take the boards out and see if I can't just edge that with a shovel instead. But these are all irises and lilies and some yarrow, again with the pollinators. The full shade, this is the only sun it's going to get, and once that tree leaves out, it's not going to have any. But this is the fern bed. So there's some acanthus in here, there's ferns in here, there's vinca, all that good stuff, and we'll see who makes it. This guy's been nice and green all winter, so he's the evergreen. But this is also the area that has the, I think they were called emperor or king fern. Some masculine, you know, patriarch name. Anyway, lovely, glorious fern. I used all of those for my sun printing, for my art. So we'll see who makes it and who doesn't. And that's all I got. That's my update from the messy, 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 messy garden and hillbilly household. It's turning into a hamlet slowly.